with breaking news and political commentary from a public servant, serial entrepreneur, community leader, philanthropist, and American patriot, and a darn nice guy. It's time for the GrassRoots TruthCast and your host, Gene Valentino.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Gene Valentino's GrassRoots TruthCast. Each week we do this show with our intention is to bring to you issues of political import, social importance, social political issues of the day is what I'm trying to say, issues that pertain to you and your way of life. Now, the guy sitting next to me here is Bill Moher. He's a candidate for U.S. Congress, Congressional District number 7. He's running as a Republican against seated Abigail Spanberger from the area, and she is about to be replaced by this guy. Bill is not only a business associate, but he's also a friend, in full disclosure. Known him when he was since his earlier days. I admit I've got a few years on you, Bill. Bill, thanks for joining us on the show today.
Thanks, Gene. It's my pleasure to be here.
What I'd like to do with you in this informal setting is to maybe talk about your background, where you came from, where you are now, and where you're going, some of the stuff that you and I have done together in full disclosure. And then I'm going to hit you straight out, as a news reporter would, with about a dozen key political questions. And I hope you use them with your associates or constituents in your neighborhood in the Virginia area. I'm very hot on the political issues, and my plug would be, folks, if you're watching this, please subscribe to the GrassRoots TruthCast, GeneValentino.com. If you subscribe, we'll push episodes like this out to you every week by email instead of you surfing around to find it on the website. Let us just push it out to you weekly. Get online at www.GeneValentino.com. Please subscribe. And if you hit the donate button, I know a guy sitting next to me I may throw some of those bucks to, and we'll get to that in a second. Bill, your background, where are you from?
Sure. I grew up in North Guilford, Connecticut, and on a small family farm, and moved to Virginia in 1997 after graduating from Carnegie Mellon University.
And what'd you major in there?
I majored in information and decision systems, and I got a Bachelor of Science degree. I studied software engineering and was involved in the college Republicans early on there, and but stayed out of politics and became a businessman. I joined a startup that was founded by 3 other Carnegie Mellon University grads, one of whom I worked with at the Pittsburgh Supercomputing Center when I was an undergraduate. And
where did your early life take you? Is it, I sense it was, from what I recall, it was a background in technology and related computer sciences?
Yes. Yeah, I was very, very early on in the web 1.0 world, the .com world, and in the DC area, I worked with a lot of telecommunications companies and a lot of and some government consulting related opportunities as well.
And how in God's green earth did you find your way into politics when you were doing so well with all this technology-based stuff?
Well, this has been a long process for me, and I started to see how broken our political system was, and I started to think about ways in which we could bring it back to the ideals of the founders of our republic. The district that I'm running to represent is a district where Madison County, James Madison's historic family land, and Montpelier are in the district, his home. And the kinds of things that he argued for in the Federalist Papers and the debates he had with Thomas Jefferson are some of the things that inspired me. And I hope to, make Congress a place where actual debate can happen. And, I hope to make laws that benefit all of the citizens of the Commonwealth of Virginia, and I hope that they are simple and articulate laws that are subject to a lot of debate,
Bill, why are you running against Ms. Spanberger?
Well, Abigail Spanberger talks about being a centrist, but I've looked at her voting record, and her voting record tells a very different story. She votes with, the Democrats almost all of the time. There are a few agricultural votes that she goes against them, but they've historically been safe votes for her to take. And she voted in this last term against HR1, which was the first bill that was brought up with the new Republican majority that would have made gas and diesel fuel affordable for all of the farmers in her district. And so I think that her voting record is starkly significantly left of center, and it's not good for Virginia and for Virginians.
Okay, so what kind of feedback are you getting from Virginians now? How does it look for you in terms of input, not only from the Republicans but the crossover Democrats?
Yeah, I'm talking to a lot of voters in the district who are, like me, fed up with Washington D.C. and politics as normal. They hate what's going on locally in the schools in Virginia, and they want to see changes. There's a hunger to return back to a regular order in the House and the Senate, and vigorous debate. And I hope to be someone who can lead the charge in passing legislation that will affect people, and freeing both businesses and the citizens from overburdensome taxes and regulations that are stifling the kinds of innovation that made the United States the greatest country in the world.
So many elected officials go into office with grandiose schemes, and I'll put I plead guilty to that as well. It's a situation where your intentions are pure. You really do intend to do well, but you hit this tsunami, you hit this wall when you enter the door, come through the doors of Congress, and you're expected to get along and go along and do your part to support some other cause of, in this case, republicanism that preceded you. So amidst the maze of a system which has its own encumbrances, Bill, how are you going to take forward? Give me your top 3 issues and how you're going to bring them forward.
Yeah, I mean, my top issue is taxation and overburdensome regulations, and so what I think we need is I think we need a fairer and more simplified taxation system where both, very, very wealthy people who are very creative with accounting and big corporations who've gotten corporate welfare into our tax code can profit where mom and pop small businesses don't stand a shot, and we know that these are the engines of innovation in our country, and we need to do what we can to make it a fairer and freer system.
Okay, that's number 1, taxation modification. What's number 2?
Number 2 is education and school choice. I have a lot of friends who have kids that are in the school systems, and many of them say that if they could afford to, they would pull their kids out of public school. Back, I'm old enough to remember back when schools used to teach kids how to think, not what to think. And it seems like political ideologies are something that are topics for discussion. And as Governor Youngkin said, I think parents matter in this world, and we've got to give the poor parents who are in failing school districts choices, and we've got to support charter schools and other alternatives, and we've got to give them the benefit of being able to move their money when they move their kids.
But you're an economics guy, you're an entrepreneur, you've had your fair share of financial successes. And one of the things I thought you would have brought out is the stimulus government should provide to getting businesses back off the ground so that our supply chain network does not rely on China and relies on domesticated supply sources in the United States, so we're not held hostage to China. You want to comment on that?
Yeah, no, I think now is the time, in a post-pandemic world where we were held hostage for things like where we couldn't get masks made here because our factories had shuttered and those jobs were gone through NAFTA and other bad policies. I want to see us make things in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and instead of figuring out ways of automating factories overseas that are owned by American companies, we need to figure out how to automate those factories in the U.S. And create a whole new host of high tech jobs supporting manufacturing and in enhancing our supply chain here.
Bill, we're going to come back to a lot more on economics and economic incentives. I believe the citizenry throughout the nation are begging for better jobs, better wages, with less inflation and lower interest rate. And I'd like to talk to you about that. Folks, we're talking with Bill Moher. Bill Moher is running for the United States Congress, House of Representative, Congressional District number 7 in Virginia. And he's my guest because I've had some past business experience with him. And I look at him as part of the new generation of responsible people that are coming up through the ranks that haven't forgotten about what it is to be an American, what it is to be patriotic, and the respect and loyalty we should give for this nation. Bill personifies. He's done it through his actions, never mind his words, through his actions. In fact, on that point, your actions, tell me about the William J. Moher Endowment for Paleontology.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've been proud to do is have a strong involvement in the Calvert Marine Museum. I enjoy looking for fossils, and I've found and donated a number of fossils to the Calvert Marine Museum from the Calvert Cliffs in Maryland. And I recently endowed a fund with the Calvert Marine Museum to give the paleontologists there assets that they can use unencumbered by any strict rules, and allow them to do the kinds of things that will preserve science for, and allow them to, manage and explore the collection that they have, which is a world-class collection from the Calvert Cliffs in Maryland.
Okay. And now my turn. Let's have a rapid fire round. I'm going to hit you with a bunch of topics. Give me a minute of response on each item, and I'll move through about 10 of them. The first one is immigration and border security. Let's discuss what it means to have a strong border to prevent illegal activities, and what else it means to you.
Yeah, so I'm in favor of protecting both the border towns and the interior of the United States from lawless migrants. I think it's important for us to have, a legal immigration system where we can attract people. My relatives came to this country like everyone's, and I enjoy the fruits of having an immigration system where we can close some of the gaps that we have by attracting talent from around the world. But it means that we have to do so with a legal system, and we can't have an open borders policy that accepts everyone.
Okay, next item, real quick. Second Amendment rights. What does the whole Second Amendment mean to you, and how strong will you stand behind that Second Amendment?
Yeah, I'm a huge supporter of the Second Amendment. My father was a firearms manufacturer in his later career, and my grandfather built tools and accessories for the firearms industry in Connecticut. And my my great uncle was a gunsmith, and so guns are very important to me. I think that the Second Amendment guarantees rights of gun ownership to individuals, thanks to the DC versus Heller decision, and had the privilege of meeting Dick Heller and talking to him about that. I own a number of firearms. I've been hunting and enjoy shooting for sport, and I want everyone else in the Commonwealth of Virginia to have those same privileges. This is, it's a matter of safety in our communities, to allow people to have guns and protect themselves. And I wouldn't consider any legislation that prevented that, in the name of safety.
I backed off on issues related to Joe and Hunter Biden. I plan to come back to that, but real quick on those two, what do you think of Biden's press to continue to try to get student loans forgiven and the impact that has on our economy and the good people who've paid their debts?
Yeah, I think it's fundamentally unfair to relieve people of student loan debt at the expense of the people who paid their loans off. There's a whole host of reasons why college is as expensive as it is, and if Congress were to get involved, they should get involved on attacking those reasons that make college unaffordable. There are plenty of things that we can do without just simply forgiving debt. And I'm happy to talk about all of those great ideas that are in there.
Okay, throw out your contact information. I'm in the middle of a rapid fire, but folks, if you're wanting to reach Bill and to discuss any of your concerns over your issues, hopefully we're addressing some of them here today. Bill, how do they reach you?
Yeah, so you can send me an email at billmoher, BILLMOHER @gmail.com. And my website is Bill Moher for Congress, FOR, Congress.com. And go there and you can subscribe to my newsletter and hear about all the issues that I talk about during this campaign.
And don't be so shy, for crying out loud. Bill needs a contribution too. Give him a contribution and help him get his campaign into high gear. He's actually, quite frankly, with social media and everything going on today, folks, he is in high gear. It's amazing the amount of response you've gotten in Virginia CD7. I'm going to come back to the kind of positive feedback you're getting right now. Next item I have is, you mentioned education before. Education in the context of what, Bill? Education in the context of critical race theory and wokeism. Tackle it, baby.
Yeah. So, what we can't have people learning is, a set of politically dubious charges that make certain people, based on the color of their skin, the victimizers or the victims of the society. We have the fairest and freest society. We have a checkered past. And, I think we need to talk about that checkered past, but I don't think we can look at, our history through the lens of today's society. We've made great strides in this country, and I'm proud of the progress we've made in making this a better and more equal society. But I don't think we can effectively judge people in the past based on standards that did not exist in the past. And so teach all of the history. But we have, in Virginia, Thomas Jefferson wanted to give more rights to all Americans, and he did some tremendous things, but he was a man of his time, and he had, a part of the original 13 colonies prevented him from making everyone equals in the Constitution. And I'm grateful for what Republican President Abraham Lincoln did, and I don't think that we should be pulling down statues of anyone just simply based on how we judge them by the standards of today. They didn't live in today's times. And I think if we forget our history, we are doomed to repeat it. And so
Yeah, you're talking about some issues that are really. I'm going to take a break right now, but before we break away, folks, this is Bill Moher, Republican candidate for Congressional District number 7 in Virginia. Please go to his website and find it in your hearts not only to subscribe to everything online, including his newsletter and other information, but provide him a contribution as well, if you would. Bill came to my attention as a podcast producer myself, and I thought he represented a flavor of the future. He caught my attention when he got on the national scene with some national celebrities, including Governor Youngkin. I think you ought to talk about that when we return. And I also think I'm going to hit you up with about 5 to 10 more position statements. I'm going to challenge you on some points, Bill, and let's see if this helps the citizens of Virginia realize just how passionate, just how serious you are about winning this election. Gene Valentino here, and you're listening to the GrassRoots TruthCast. We'll be back right after this.
Gene Valentino's GrassRoots podcast. He tells the truth. He tries to get information out there to make sure people make good, informed decisions.
Hi, friends, and welcome back to our second half of our episode here with Republican candidate Bill Moher, Congressional District number 7. He's running for the House of Representatives in the United States Congress. Welcome back, Bill.
Pleased to be back, Gene.
Just before we broke, you were in the middle of a few different issues I was challenging you on, but I really just want the folks to understand this is a very unique election. He's running up against a district that's more Democrat than Republican, but not by much in the scheme of things compared to the other congressional districts in Virginia. It's about as neutral as it gets between Republican and Democrat, and Bill stands a very good chance of coming forward and becoming your next United States congressman, our next United States congressman. He's got a population of about 600,000 people, and surprisingly, about 500,000 of them are registered voters. Geez, I wonder where all the kids are. But we were talking about education as one of your issues for those children, and one of my concerns was critical race theory and the woke ideology that's gotten so perverse, Bill. I mean, to me, I think there's a bigger picture in mind. I think there's something to do with distraction, deflection, and diversion of your attention and mind intended by China to take yourself off the ball, off the real issues, and to have you spin on these sub-issues, which one is the disintegration of our educational system. I like before the break, you brought up the fact that you support a chartered school approach where parents can decide on their own whether to keep their child in the public school system. But here you go. Will Congress support the notion of a rebate to that same parent for the taxes paid presumably on their property taxes for education? How does that parent get reimbursed if the student comes out of the standard public school system and goes into a chartered school system, an approved private school system for a better education? If that's the parent's choice, they shouldn't be paying for education twice.
That's right. Yeah, I think that the way that we have the system set up today, there are, the money should follow the student, and the money should follow the student into whatever school their parents think is right for them, be it a homeschool or be it a charter school. And there are a lot of cooperative homeschool programs in Virginia. There are fantastic places to get kids educated, and places where each kid can have and find success.
Yeah, but is the parent getting rebated in some way for the extra fee they now have to pay to get them into that private program?
Yeah, I think we need to look at whatever means we can do to make those fees deductible on their federal taxes, and figure out a way that can where we can get the kids the greatest outcome. At the end of the day, we're only as good as the next generation of workers that we have in this country.
That's
And
right.
we need the outcome of the education to be the only thing we care about.
Hey, does that opponent of yours behind you, Karen, have you heard any information from her of her willingness to step up and do the same?
Yeah, I have not seen a concerted effort by any Democrats around disrupting the teachers union stranglehold on public education. And I think we need to look at every idea that can work to the benefit of students.
Okay, switching gears slightly. Big tech, free speech. What's big tech? That they cannot influence government, and government cannot influence big tech weeks before an election to sway public opinion for or against a candidate. It seems to have existed, admittedly, through testimony in Congress recently. That testimony referred to the Trump election of 2020, in which information came out just days and weeks prior to the election against Trump, which proved to be a false narrative and a diatribe of just wrong representations on Donald Trump. What is the penalty, in your opinion? What should Congress craft to penalize people personally, not just institutions they're working for that behavior?
Yes, yeah, I think that we need to make political speech something that is fundamentally protected, and we need to find ways of protecting all speech. There shouldn't be
Well, remember in the yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm getting some feedback, Gene. I don't know if you're hearing it as well.
I am not, sorry. Go ahead.
So, I think in the same way that some of the civil rights legislation protected public accommodations, I think we need to, I think our First Amendment has strong protections today, but it doesn't enforce those protections on private companies. And the problem with the large monoliths that are in technology is that if they can just take a site down, where else can you go to get that information? And so I think we need to pass laws that make political speech, a special class of speech, and see its protection.
One of the biggest concerns I have is that media has engaged with government and government has engaged with media. Said differently, the right to free speech is so absolute by the nature of our First Amendment of the Constitution, but cannot any right be abused. And my concern here is, do you have any ideas in mind about what we can do to protect free speech and the purity of it, both for the individual and the institutions, but in the same light, penalties be imposed for the wrongdoing of free speech, the misuse of free speech, to steer a narrative, a Russian hoax, the ability to sweep certain things under the rug as if they never existed in one sense, and then the ability to exacerbate a point that turns out to have no basis in fact, but steers the attention of the public away from the truth. Any comments about that?
Yeah, I think that anything that the government does to suppress speech acts should be should be dealt with severely. I think we need to establish, causes of action against people who abuse the power. There are limits on speech, but I wouldn't defend somebody's right to scream fire in a crowded theater. But
there you go.
The things that
There you go.
Congress has been, or the things that the federal government has been doing are not to protect people's rights. They are to protect their own narrative, and the dangers that exist.
So to that point right there, Bill, to that point right there, what's the solution? You and I can whine about the problems all day long, Mr. Congressman. What are you going to do to fix that?
Yeah, again, I think we need to categorize political speech as highly protected, and we need to have, civil and criminal penalties for the suppression of political speech. And the
you mean to say civil and criminal penalties for the injury caused from free speech?
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. And that is excluded under the law now with politicians and government. New York Times versus Sullivan, 1968, prevented a police chief from suing the New York Times. At the Supreme Court ruled that, sorry, buddy, you're a public figure. You have no right to sue the New York Times unless you can prove it's malice, which is nearly impossible to prove. But I think there has to be some media responsibility these days because of the morphing since 1968. There was no such thing as social media back then, the internet the way we know it today, high-speed travel, Zoom calls like this that allow us to do an interview on the fly didn't exist back then. So I think what I would suggest, if I, as a citizen, asking you to represent me, is that you look to the Constitution and secure a few key amendments to help protect this nation, such as one day to vote, not 3 months prior to vote. How about that?
Yeah, I think that, I think there are many things that we can do, to codify our laws by doing amendments. I think that we've been chilled to the idea of amending our Constitution. And I think by deferring to the Supreme Court and failing to exercise our legislative responsibilities and deferring to this huge bureaucratic state that we have, in the name of progressivism, the Congress delegated some of its lawmaking powers because it was thought that the administrative state can do some of that work. We've seen with decisions that have come down recently that the EPA, for instance, can no longer pass sweeping regulations. And if we want those sweeping regulations, we've got to get them through as law.
We're talking with Bill Moher, candidate for Congress in CD 7, Congressional District 7. He's running as a Republican in the central region of Virginia. And we hope you're willing to step up and maybe make a contribution to his campaign. At the very least, Bill, give them your contact information so they can ask you more about your campaign.
Sure. It is Bill Moher, BILLMOHER, FOR, Congress.com.
And what are you doing gnawing at the side of your opponent behind you in that picture, Ms. Spamberger? I guess, is she aware that you're going after her and where you stand on these issues?
She should be. I've been talking throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia and in social media about her record. If she wants to maintain the illusion that she's a centrist, I am more than happy to talk about her voting record and talk about the things that she's done that no centrist candidate should support. There.
Bill, in your district, you also have two pretty strong military bases, the Quantico and Dahlgren. Obviously, a very important training ground for many of those crossing all aspects of the military and national security. My question is, in the context of what we've given to Ukraine for funding, where do you stand on continued support for Ukraine? How should we support Ukraine? And that'll lead up to my next question. Go for it.
Sure. So, I'm not a non-interventionalist. I think that there's tremendous war crimes that are occurring in Ukraine, but I don't think we can give those leaders a blank check. I think we need to have a measured response to how we fund this conflict, and I'm not a hawk, but I'm a fiscal hawk. I think that we can't afford to continue to send precious dollars away from our economy and into this conflict if we don't have a pathway to victory, outlined.
Would you support a balanced budget amendment?
Absolutely.
So you'd support a more refined approach to how we vote, a balanced budget amendment. Where do you stand on Trump's position about pulling out of, if he's elected as president, pulling out of Ukraine literally overnight, the way he's talking?
Look, I think whatever we do militarily and with foreign policy, we have to look at the consequences. The abrupt pullout from Afghanistan, I think, was a mistake. I think if we had just started driving the weapons that we were leaving there out of the country, over 6 months, we would have a better outcome. We can't afford to do anything drastic when it comes to our armed forces, and we have to understand all of the implications of what being in a conflict means and what drawing down from that conflict means. I look to some of the lessons that we learned in the first Cold War. These things are marathons, they're not sprints, and so we need to have a very sensible approach to how we support the organizations that exist in Ukraine. And this is not a simple conflict. There are we need to ask more of our European partners in this conflict. They're the ones who are so dependent on Ukraine as a breadbasket for Europe, and we can't afford to shoulder the burden for our European partners exclusively.
Yeah. Bill, I remember, well, I wasn't there. I was not even born yet, but post World War II. But we, as Americans, and our national pride and our image was to spread the good tidings of democracy to the rest of the world. And we did so not in a hostile way or a takeover way. We did it through benevolence. And long before NATO was formed, post World War II, we had the Berlin airlift, we had the Marshall Plan. We were doing things to support our European allies. Then came NATO. So to me, do you think NATO is the precursor in accepting Ukraine in before we decide to help Ukraine out? Or could Ukraine just be someone we approach directly? Instead of giving them bombs, why don't we give them the similar kind of money for financial incentives to start building chip manufacturing companies that Taiwan is about to lose to China?
Yeah, I think there are many different things that we can do to help Ukraine and to help rebuild their country. But, again, I think we need to look at rebuilding our own country first, and there are empty factories in Virginia where I want chip manufacturing jobs to go before I look at bringing those factories to Ukraine.
Good point. Very good point. That is the answer, in my opinion, and I'm glad you answered it that way. I think before we reinstate our benevolence to the rest of the world, that we stop being taken for fools and get our borders secured, our budget balanced, an election process that makes sense. And I've listened to you talk to me directly. Folks, I've listened to Bill talk to me directly, and he has clearly expressed this opinion, although he's a little calmer today for some strange reason, but he's quite the leader and quite capable. His entrepreneurial background, which he has talked the least about, impresses me the most. His consulting background with Microsoft. You want to talk about that just to jump?
Sure. Yeah, I've spent about the last 25 years helping firms in all kinds of industries adopt technology and adopt a digital strategy, and taking everything that I've learned in that effort. I hope to take that same engineering discipline that I applied to these business problems and apply it to the problems that we face in our Congress.
And jumping on you real quick before we run out of time, what's your feeling about the undocumented illegals, in fact, reportedly over 100 terrorists from foreign nations, not Mexico, including Chinese, slipping in on our southern border? What are you going to do about this invasion to our southern border? Never mind the insurrection on January 6th. What about the invasion on our southern border?
Look, I think that our next president needs to focus very exclusively on this problem. I think Governor Youngkin did a very brave thing of sending our National Guard, the Virginia National Guard, down to the Texas border. I would support efforts to engage our military in stopping this invasion. I think we need to look at the broad swath of people that are marching across our borders and seek out criminals that intend on doing us harm, and get them out of this country and back to their home country, because we can't be a nation if we're just subject to an open and porous border. It's unkind to the refugees that are coming here legally, and to our own American citizens to have an open border policy, and we certainly can't afford to do that and provide all the services that our own citizens need.
Bill, my grandparents, God rest their souls, came in legally. They were Italian immigrants and Irish immigrants, but they came in legally, and they contributed to making this nation the great nation it is. I don't think any of us are against immigration. And in fact, we welcome it as a component. After all, we are a melting pot of the world. But I agree with you. We need to do it legally. And my biggest concern, which I will ask you to address when you're elected congressman, is, we may not be able to wait till the next election to get rid of folks. And the impeachment process is so encumbered. I would ask you to consider a mechanism that allows us to do away with those elected officials and their staff, the bureaucrats, some of whom have been in office 40 years, have been on the job 40 years, that there be a remedy or a mechanism for their immediate removal when we see things being done wrong. Our society is moving so quick today. I think we need a faster mechanism in place, that our outdated government, Constitution is a beautiful animal with our amendments, but we need to make sure it's more responsive and more immediate when we recognize wrongdoing. And I think that's part of what's captured everybody's attention right now. We're caught up in the 6 o'clock news, watching issues that shouldn't be in the news. The big issues to us, like jobs, lower cost of living, interest rates, inflation, incentives to grow within the United States instead of sitting home taking a COVID check on the couch are, to me, the major issues. So I close asking you to keep those issues in mind when you're elected. And to the citizens watching, this journalist is strongly supporting Bill Moher, Republican for the United States Congress Congressional District number 7 in Virginia. Please contact him. Your contact information again, Bill, is?
BillMoherForCongress.com.
BillMoherForCongress.com. Give Bill a call or contact him through the website. And this has been one of the many episodes that we've done on Gene Valentino's GrassRoots TruthCast. I pick certain political and social figures out from time to time and do a deep dive on that particular person. We're doing it today with Bill Moher in Virginia. Thank you, Bill, for joining us. This has been a pleasure.
Thank you, Gene. It's always a pleasure to hear your views and to support them. And I'm hoping that I can land in Congress and do it there.
A lot of people, when they get to know you, Bill, the way our family has, will genuinely be honored to have you working to protect America and that flag. Thank you for joining us, Bill.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining us for Gene Valentino's GrassRoots TruthCast. Be sure to like and subscribe, and God bless America.